All right, there we go. Hello, everybody. Anthony Reacts is back with you. We're on here live following NXT and following AEW Dynamite Title Tuesday, NXT TNA Showdown. A lot taking place. Let's get right into it again. I think we're gonna do the live stream on the Side Hustle YouTube and also on the Inside Edge YouTube. I think this is my assignment going forward this week. The NXT reviews. We loved the TNA because they were on tonight as well. So it didn't seem fair to just do NXT and not TNA on a day where they're both on. But typically we will do the NXT reacts. Kyle will have the Monday Night Raw reacts. And honestly, with SmackDown, probably once we're done with high school football, I might jump in and do some of the SmackDown reviews or do a few as the schedule allows, but kind of going from there. Let me start, believe it or not, with AEW. And my first observation before I give a compliment, we usually do the positive, negative, positive combo. I'm going to flip it a little bit. I think AEW, and admittedly, I've been off the grid with AEW programming for the last few weeks. So today was a good reintroduction of AEW programming for me. And I saw a lot of pretty good wrestling on the AEW side of things. But I will be honest and be frank that there are very few guys right now in AEW that actually stand out, that you can pinpoint and say, hey, those are stars. Those are superstars. We need to circle our programming around. And when did Don Callis have like a quarter of the roster in his stable? That's interesting to me. There is two guys, though, to me that stand out as superstars. And one guy in particular that, based on the way AEW, their programming is right now, in my honest opinion, especially after that final angle, the biggest star in AEW is Darby Allin. That is the biggest star in AEW. Jon Moxley is a good foil. Just due to his credibility, his name value, holding on to the AEW title for a while. And I do credit Tony Khan because Jon Moxley held on to the title for as long as he did. And the Death Riders, they're credible. I'm not saying get the belt back to them, but they are credible. But Darby Allin, for a show, you want your top guy to kind of reflect where you're at as a program. I would say this. I don't think Darby Allin would be an ideal WWE World Heavyweight Champion, but Darby Allin thrives as an AEW World Champion because right now a good chunk of AEW programming is a ton of hardcore crash TV. I mean, it really is. I mean, look at the Hurt Syndicate match. Look at Pac and Orange Cassidy. Look at some of the other action that took place. AEW, honestly, they thrive on the car crash. It's a little bit long of a car crash, but they thrive on a car crash wrestling. And Darby Allin is the champion of car crash wrestling. And that's, we've been saying for 6 years, can AEW find an identity? Can they find an identity? And they had an identity earlier in their run. And then I would say 23, especially 24, they lost their way. First half of 25, they lost their way. I think AEW overall, maybe they have some, I'll be honest, it's very hard to follow their storylines just because you have to watch both Dynamite and Collision, which, okay, fine. You got to reward but you also got to watch Ring of Honor. Collision's never on at the same time every single week. And when it is on a Saturday night where people are out and busy. So I've always had an issue with that, putting key storylines on Collision. I've always had an issue with that. And week to week with Dynamite, is it on for 2 hours? Is it on for 3 hours? Is it on for 2.5 hours? I mean, those questions we were expecting from Raw with Netflix. But Raw on Netflix has settled in on 2.5 hours, basically, give or take. Dynamite, week to week, we just don't know. And every week, next week is 3 hours. So I get it's tough because you're trying to find what works. You're surrounding yourself with like TBS baseball, postseason coverage, TNT's college football, TNT's NHL coverage. Just a ton of things. But I will say, I say all that gibberish to say, Darby Allin is AEW's biggest star. It ain't Hangman Page. It's not. I know Hangman Page is the grown adult in the room. There is nothing he does that intrigues me. There's nothing that Hangman does on the microphone. I think he's a fine wrestler, but there's nothing he does that says, I need to watch him over anybody else. Again, that's not to say Hangman Page should be like buried in the mid-card or anything like that. To me, Hangman Page, yeah, he's a component of the main event scene, but for the type of program that AEW is trying to go for, to try to reach a different audience, nothing that Hangman has done brings me to the dance. It just doesn't. They're trying, I guess for me, they're trying to use Hangman in a way that WWE is using Cody Rhodes, and it doesn't bring in new viewers. Now, you could argue, hey, you're bringing in kids, you're bringing in children, so maybe that's the case. But as far as aiming for children, none of that matters when you are talking about your main course of television being Crash TV. So that's why, to me, out of everything that AEW did tonight, and we'll talk about NXT Showdown in a second, out of everything that AEW did tonight, 90% of it did not stand out to me. But what did, and they're going to have the I Quit match at Wrestle Dream, was Darby Allin and Jon Moxley. So that's my Dynamite thoughts on that. I was never disappointed, so I guess that's a good thing. Flip it over. I was a little surprised that YouTube TV, YouTube TV has the multi-view, and I have both the CW and TBS, but multi-view is not advanced to a point where every combination in the world is available. So for whatever reason, there was no multi-view option for NXT and for Dynamite because I could have just flipped back and forth. So I watched NXT on the big screen, and on my phone, I had AEW on for most of it. I was kind of trying to fast forward, try to go through commercials, things like that. So when shows go head-to-head, there are details that I may miss. But again, for AEW, I didn't see any bad wrestling, but I just saw a lot of guys and not a lot of people who stood out, except for Darby, Jon Moxley, and the Death Riders. I will quickly mention too, Samoa Joe is the new challenger for the AEW World title. It doesn't scream to me that he's in any position to win the title. It's just another title defense for the uninteresting Hangman Adam Page. So, to me, Hangman is probably going to remain champion until MJF comes back and he takes that title. And then MJF should be the bridge holder for Darby Allin if they continue on the path with Crash TV with AEW in 2026. Now, to NXT TNA Showdown. And again, I will point out, this is the show that I will normally be covering on Tuesdays. NXT Reacts. I'm going to be honest. I think sometimes when you do invasion angles and, showdowns and things like that, you got to make sure that it's, I guess, easy to follow, maybe for dummies. And like everyone is represented. I think if you're going to do an NXT TNA Showdown, I think the big thing that was missing today was a TNA representative on commentary. Because time and again, especially with the women's match, the women's Survivor Series match, but I could say the same for the men's. Time and time again, I'm watching the show and I'm like, who's on the TNA team? Now, what doesn't help is that I love that the alliance, the 2001 invasion was referenced because I think they both have similar problems. A good chunk of TNA talent work for NXT or are former WWE. So you had, on the women's match, you had the Iconics, who, whatever their name is now, but you had the Iconics, who I remember to be, obviously. And then you had Kalania Jordan, who crossed them. It was never really explained why certain NXT guys could cross over and then others couldn't. I don't think this was really thoroughly thought out because Jordynne Grace and Joe Hendry should have had a bigger role in these stories as two actual crossovers. And the fact that both of them were wasted as special guest referees. And I say wasted because nothing happened. Nothing happened. Jordynne Grace had no influence over the finish of the Women's Survivor Series match, and Joe Hendry had no influence, no impact over what happened with the Men's Survivor Series match. It just didn't make sense to me why two of the top stars, two of many top stars, it didn't make sense to me why you do this showdown, which I guess upon reflection may have seemed a bit rushed. Jordynne Grace and Joe Hendry do not have a bigger role. Questioning their allegiance. This didn't make sense to me. As far as some of the matches are concerned, I do need to go back and watch thoroughly Dark State in the Hardys. I was cooking dinner. And I was kind of getting the setup going and stuff. And I don't want to fall too far behind because of the live stream here. But congrats to the Hardys for winning the tag team titles. Of course, the bigger play at hand is their TNA match against the Dudleys at Bound for Glory. So congrats to them on that. Like I said, Team TNA on the women's side, men's side, I can say. The story of the match, of course, was JC Jane stealing the W away from Sol Ruca. And Ruca, by the way, you want to talk about like who could immediately, if she showed up on Friday, and I know she was on the show this past Friday, but if she was a permanent member of the SmackDown Women's Division, Sol Ruca could easily fit that bill of enhancing the SmackDown women's roster. Jane can as well. I know it's not Jane's time yet, but JC Jane is one of the stronger mic workers in WWE in the entire company. And, she's getting her run. Maybe we have to wait a year for JC Jane to move up to the main roster. Probably awaiting a strong NXT championship run, but I think she has what it takes to kind of move up. I don't want to look at these NXT shows and think oh, I like this. They're going to move up. I like this because, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they talked about it. It's and you've heard interviews from other wrestlers. It's no longer, this person's ready to move up. Let's move them up. It's, do we have something on the main roster for said person? Because we've seen in the past, Carmelo Hayes is a perfect example. Somebody who was absolutely ready to move up. They move up, and then the main roster, there's nothing for them. So there's this floundering on the main roster, and then, it's not their fault, but they fail. Now, Carmelo Hayes, things are turning the corner. They have been for a little while now, but it took a minute. It did take a minute. Survivor Series matches are interesting in general because, when it was exclusively on pay-per-view or even PLEs, Survivor Series matches have to be booked in a way where people don't look weak, but inevitably, if you are eliminated first, nobody looks strong unless you're the sole survivors. So we saw in the men's match, Miles Bourne eliminated early in the match. He was the first one eliminated. And then you got Booker say, well, he's a weak link anyway. Well, yeah, that helps. Again, like I said, there needed to be a TNA. You could have kept, obviously Vic and Booker there. But maybe this show, and I know they ended on bad terms, but maybe this is where you bring on Tom Phillips as the TNA rep to give some backstory on some of these guys. I thought Ethan Page and Mustafa Ali, what a finish. I don't think it was intentional, but Booker T's headset, his cable got caught on to Ali, and Ethan Page, innovative finish. Loved it there. Great match. And then the men's Survivor Series match. First off, I'm happy that Team TNA won the match. I think it would be a little bit insulting if Ricky Saints overcame a 4-1 odds. So it made sense. At least cut it down to the final two. Moose and Mike Santana holding on for the win. And the bigger story is Trick Williams turning on Ricky Saints and turning on NXT. But again, this is where the invasion angle was flawed in the first place. Trick Williams is the TNA champion. Why does it matter that Trick Williams turned on NXT? He's not the NXT champion. He's the TNA champion. Why was he on Team NXT? Why was he not on Team TNA? Why did Santino not pick his world champion to be the captain of the men's TNA team, but he picked Kalani Jordan, the Knockouts champion, to be the captain of the women's team? So I think in arriving to Invasion, I think there were severe flaws that made things, even for me, even for you guys as the hardcore fan, we have to explain, we react to these stories, but if I'm sitting here trying to remember all the details about how to arrive at certain stories when they're kind of rushed. It's very tricky to do. And I could imagine that the common fan watching, they don't know all the stuff that's going on. So, me personally, again, I thought tonight's show was fine. It did the job as far as doing something different. You're going up against tough AEW competition. I think both shows tonight did a good job serving their audience. I think they both did a great job serving their audience. But on the NXT side, I am very happy that after today, we're moving on from the TNA NXT. I know they're going to have like knockouts involved with some things next week, but for the invasion, that stuff, I'm happy we're moving on. I'm happy that's done. That's it. Calling it a day. Forget about it. So, all right. Usually these will not last this long. I know in the past we've had videos that lasted this long, but we cover 2 shows. So that'll do it for the live stream here. And hope you enjoyed some great wrestling. We got the pod. It's going to come out Thursday morning this week, since we are doing we got 2 football games this week, so the schedule kind of moves up a little bit. So we got the pod Thursday morning. I heard Kyle talking about Roman Reigns and Raw last night, so we'll talk definitely about that. I got to do my homework and watch SmackDown from last Friday before we record our podcast tomorrow. But that'll be out Thursday. Like I said before, I think if you're an NXT fan, pretty good night. If you're a TNA fan, decent night. I don't know if all your stars got over, honestly, but an okay night. And I think if you're an AEW fan, you're pretty happy with what you saw tonight. I don't think either show did enough to grab the opposite section of the audience and bring them over. I don't think either show did that, but there were some standouts tonight, and you'll see them moving forward on Tuesday nights, and if you're an AEW fan, on Wednesday nights. All right. That's it. It's 11 o'clock since we're recording this live. Have a good night, everybody.